as the first part, which exhorts us to preach the gospel. But if you understand these commandments aright, you shall not be content with merely endeavor to accept the present pain, sorrow, and suffering of anyone or any member of the people. We shall attempt to get to the bottom of all human suffering, so that by removing the main cause, we may eradicate the effects. To do this, we arrive at the true conclusion concerning the origin of sorrow and suffering, and the means for its permanent eradication. We must go back into the far distant past, in fact, to the beginning of physical existence. The Bible has been given to the Western world by the recording angels, who give to every nation the religion that is best fitted to guide it upon the path of its spiritual and physical evolution. And if we seek the light from that source, we shall certainly find. It must be borne in mind that the Christ taught the multitude in parables, that give to his disciples the meaning of those parables and the deeper things concerning the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. Paul also taught a different, or rather a deeper truth to those who were strong in the faith, but gave milk to the more elementary doctrines to babies. Similarly, we must understand that beside the meaning which the word of God carries upon its face, there is a deeper and hidden side, which we shall do well to ponder upon tonight. Let us first grasp the idea that the earth was not always as it is today, that there has been an immense period of formation, and that this planet must have gone through various stages of development before it reached the present condition. We see in the heaven nebula, which are now fairy. We can understand that moisture must be condensed by this fire from the cold expanse of space. We can also understand that this moisture is quickly evaporated when it comes into contact with such a fiery boiling vortex, that the stream generated rises into space to be there condensed again by the cold, this going through the measurable cycle of evaporation and condensation until finally a crust is formed around the fiery core. This crust becomes harder when gradually the superfluous moisture is evaporated as a mist. The mist eventually gathered and condensed into the cloud, falling again upon the planet as a flood and living conditions of climate as we find them today upon the earth. These stages, the Rosicrucian teachings call them Hyperborean, Atlantic, and Iron period. So the earth has gone through a whole lot of period where it was fiery, and then in the Bible we were told that God separated the water from the land and all those things. We go through a lot of stages until the crust become hardened, and then due to interaction of the cold and then the fiery surface, and then you have the present earth that we have today. We shall not speak of the first mention of these islands, but during the latter part of the Lemurian epoch, when mankind still lived on Padgett Island of the forming crust, they were very different from humanity today. So during the Lemurian epoch, the earth was still here. The volcanoes were erupting here and there, and that was the stage that we were living in. And our bodies were not like the present bodies that we have. They were, in fact, giants of a bodily shape, which would be repulsive to our present notion of bodily symmetry and beauty. But it differed particularly in this fact that the ego had not yet learned to draw within its body properly and permanently. So the body was a valued thing that the spirit was using. The spirit had by then also not entered the body. So we were moving around like this, but they still have control over the body. In fact, they did not know at that time that they had their bodies. They used them as unconsciously as we use our digestive apparatus. Their sight was focused altogether in the spiritual world, in the so-called face-to-face, or rather, those whom they thought were gods, namely the divine messengers who guided them. So we were more focused on the spiritual world than the physical. Like the same thing that when you eat, the body food digests, but you don't know the process that goes through in the stomach. Divine messengers who guided them as children are guided by their parents. For at the time they have developed no word, and you don't have any word. So whatever the angels and then the divine messengers tell us, then we follow. Being unconscious of their bodies, they knew neither birth nor death. The loss of the physical vehicle happened frequently on account of the volcanic eruption that were the order of the day upon our forming earth. But it was like the falling of a dry leaf from a tree. It produced no difference at all in their consciousness. Neither was the birth of a new body a distracting event, because all through birth and death, their consciousness was focused in the invisible realm. Because by that time, whether you die or not, you see ourselves as spirit. So when the person's body falls, we would still see the spirit. So there's no need to cry, to worry that you have lost a friend or something like that. So that is how we were living and being guided by the angels. At certain times of the year, the angels, who have always been the harbingers of birth, headed this host of children into great temples where the propagating act was performed as an act of sacrifice under the proper planetary ray. In those moments of intensely intimate contact, one's attention was temporarily drawn from the spiritual realm to the physical world, and Adam knew his wife. So when times come for us to propagate, the angels will gather us. Like what happens in the human world, at certain seasons they will say that nobody should kill grass cutter or this, because it's at that time that they meet. So the angels will gather us together. We also meet like the angels and then we give up. But during that time, because of the volcanic activities, they frequently die. You go near the volcano will erupt and then your body will dead. But still, you see the spirits and then you are not worried about that you have lost a relative. But the angels were not all of the same nature. No, okay, thus the keynote of the body then conceived was in perfect tune with the harmony of the spheres at that moment, and therefore iteration was painless, health was perfect, and death had no terror for humanity of that age. So because of this, and they were guided by the angels, the rhythm of the cosmos were in tune. They were in tune with the rhythm of the cosmos, said that their bodies were very healthy, and there's no sorrow, there's no pain during childbirth. But the angels were not all of the same nature. There were two classes, one attuned to water and the other to fire. It is the latter class which was apostrophized by Isaiah in that wonderful passage where he says, "O Lucifer, son of the morning, how art thou fallen?" So you have two classes of angels. You have those who are attuned to water and those who are attuned to fire. And the Lucifer spirits are attuned to fire. From the water spirit or through angels, man received the rain. But Lucifer, spirit of fire, is the light giver. From the fire spirit comes the light of reason. The desire body of man was by then impregnated with a new faculty, namely impulse. And as it was necessary for them to use a physical instrument for their own further development, though they were unable to create such a vehicle, they taught man that he had a dense body, and they also enlightened him concerning the methods whereby he might generate a new vehicle at any time when the old one dies, regardless of the planetary conditions. And man, yielding to the impulse of the Lucifer spirit, incited by the passion they instill, begin to regard the generative act as a means of enjoyment and gratification instead of a sacrament. Hence, the bodies born under such conditions were out of tune with the cosmic harmony. Therefore, iteration becomes painful, health becomes impaired, and death entered upon his reign as king of terror. So the Lucifer spirit were trying to, because they cannot also act of their own, take certain decisions. They wanted man to, they educated man that just physical body. So as the man acts, and then they will learn also from man's actions, what they are, the results of their actions, and then they will also learn from it. And they taught us that, oh, you shouldn't worry. When our body dies, once our attention is turned to the physical world, when our body dies, we can create a new body without necessarily waiting for the angels to guide us. And because of the gratification in it, you also accepted it and started creating our own bodies at any time that we want. And that actually brought us to pain, because now previously our attention was focused on the spiritual world. We don't have any view about the physical. So when the body dies, we cannot worry. Now you see ourselves physically. So when the body dies, you see that, oh, I've lost a relative, I've lost a friend, and I've lost. So we begin to take the law into our own hands and live our life. And this brought about, it's become painful to give birth, because now you see it, health becomes impaired because we are not in, our bodies are not in harmony with the cosmic rhythm. And then also enter, and we started suffering because of what we learned, the Lucifer spirit helped us to do. But the only thing they give is that they give us the opportunity to now take our destiny into our own hands and live our own life without anybody guiding us. Whilst Adam knew his wife only during the time when the angels presided over the prerogative acts, his consciousness was focused all the rest of the time in the spiritual world. But things became radically different when man took the matter into his own hand. The oftener he knew his wife for self-gratification, the oftener the more thoroughly his consciousness became focused in the physical world, and the more he lost sight of the higher realms, until finally they have been forgotten or almost so. So the more we started engaging in the gratification and then the acts by our own self, the more we were losing the spiritual side. Until gradually we go on to such a time that we have all lost sight of the spiritual aspect at all. And then we have become more attuned to the physical world. Therefore, birth now seems the beginning of life. So now we think only life is when you are born into the earth. Because we have no idea of the spirit or whether it's you control you know what it is. So how quite to do that? When you are born, that is where you are life, and then life has started for you. And when you die, the life ends. Therefore, birth now seems the beginning of life. It commenced in pain from mother and babe. Life itself is usually a part of sorrow and suffering, because in spirit we feel orphaned from our Father, and at the end stand dead, the King of terrors, to usher the spirit into what is to our physical consciousness the great unknown, and all because of the impulse of passion, wherewith the martial Lucifer spirit have impregnated our desired nature. And so long as the firelight of passion change our desired nature, this regime must continue. So long as the passion that has been posed in us, primate in us, continue, and we continue to take the law into our own hands and do our own creation and all this, then it means the sorrow and pain will continue, because we have no solution to it. You know, when you come to it, that's the time that God has created you. When you die, that is the end of you. You are going to face judgment and suffer. You have no idea that the spirit continues, or where the spirit goes after death. The Old Testament opened with the account of how man was led astray by the false light of the Lucifer spirit, giving birth to all the sorrow and suffering in the world. So the contact with the Lucifer spirit, and then the teaching that he gave us, and we accepted it and started practicing it, is the cause of all our sorrows and suffering that we are facing in the world now. It closes with the promise that the Son of Righteousness shall arise with healing in his wing. And in the New Testament, we find the Son of Righteousness, the true light, come to save the world. And the first fact which is stated regarding him is that he is of immaculate conception. So as we all know that the Lucifer spirit has taught us, and we have all started to create our own by our own, unless we go back to when the angels were guiding us, so that you can create immaculate, you can do the act immaculately and then be able to give birth to holy children. There is no way you can overcome. And the person who is coming to save us will be immaculately born or give birth. Like the Christ, you all know the Christ story, that he was immaculately conceived and born. Now this point should be thoroughly understood and should be clear from the foregoing that it is the Luciferian taint of passion which has brought sorrow, sin, and suffering into the world. So the passion that the Lucifer spirit infuses in us, that is really the cause of all our suffering. And that gives us the incentive to act, and then we act selfishly, and then it leads to all our suffering, sickness, and disease that we are facing now in this world. Prior to the impregnation of the bizarre body with these demonic principles, conception was immaculate and a sacrament. So before the Lucifer spirit impregnated with all these ideas, and we started following them, that the angels will bring us together, and then we all do the conception, and then the children that will be born are pure. Like how the animals take care of their children, they give birth, and then they move around without any suffering. But we decided not to follow the path, the cosmic path, and then we'll do the things on our own. Great charge anytime. Man walked in the presence of the angels then, pure and unashamed. So in those days that the angels were taking care of, but you were in contact with them. They will call you, hey, don't pass here, there's a volcano here, and then you follow. They were guiding us, helping us. You die, you give birth, you don't feel anything, there is no suffering, your body is always healthy. and be able to move around and then try to conquer the earth. The act of fertilization was as chaste as that of the flower. Therefore, when the mischief had been roused, immediately the messenger or angels gilded them with leaves to impress upon them the idea which they must learn to live. So after we started doing the act on our own, and then the angels saw that, these people, you look at the Bible, what it says, and Adam and Eve, when God saw them, say, hey, we were naked and we have now covered ourselves. So they were ashamed of what they have done. So the angels serve them to cover themselves so that we will not follow up what we are doing. Namely, chastity, like that of the plant. Whenever we are able to perform the act of generation in a pure, chaste, and passionless manner, as that of the plant does, as immaculate conception takes place, and a Christ child is born, capable of healing all the suffering of humanity, capable of conquering death and establishing immortality, a true light to lead humanity away from the pilgrims of passion, through self-sacrifice and compassion. So once you're able to lead the right life and then conceive immaculately without passion, like what the plants do, then you'll be able to overcome all this suffering because you have a perfect body which can withstand all sorts of diseases, and then you will bring a body that is in tune with the cosmic rhythm. So that because now our bodies are all out of balance with the cosmic rhythm. That is why we go along with it and then face all this suffering that we are going through now. This then is the great idea towards which we are striving. So the ability to overcome this passion, the ability to overcome this selfishness, greed, worries, fear, and all the passionate desires is what we are all striving to achieve now in this world. To cleanse ourselves from the taint of egotism and selfishness. And therefore, we look upon the emblem of the rose cross as an ideal. So as an aspirant, our desire is always to look upon the rose cross, meditate upon it, and see how best we can clean ourselves. And therefore, we look upon the emblem of the rose cross as an ideal. For the 7 roses typify the cleansed blood. The white rose shows the purity of life, and the golden wedding garment radiating star symbolize that inestimable influence for health, helpfulness, and spiritual uplift that radiates from every servant of humanity. So my dear brothers and sisters, all what the nature is trying to inform us is that we all know the causes of why it started long ago. When at the time in our life, we were in touch with the animal, with the angels and the messengers. We were talking to them, doing everything with them, until it came to the time that the Lucifer spirit advised them to take the law into our own hands and lead our whole life. We followed them, and then we were also not strong at that time. We don't have the word. So we were following them blindly until we got into where we are now. So when we are praying, the only thing we can overcome the suffering is to try to purify ourselves, have the purity of motive, whatever you are doing, make sure it's proper that you are doing for service, and be able to sacrifice ourselves so that if you have the desire to do something, you think about it, whether that desire is helpful before you do it. Not because you see a beautiful girl and then your desire says this and then you are also following. Is this right thing to do? if it is not right, then you don't have to go in at all. And then the fellowship also are talking about the exercises, which are all there to help us to tune our mind. Because once you're able to control the mind, then the spirit can take over the mind and help us to direct us. Because now at the moment, the mind is with the desire. So whatever the desire tells us, then we are following. And the desire is always the lower nature, which is the desire to us to follow and continue to be with where we are. The suffering continues, the sorrows continue, the disease continues. So it is up to us as an aspirant to find a way that we can reverse this long age trend. It will not be a day, but gradually we have to start gradually. Think of it, that how can we control ourselves? Because we have said in Cosmo that Barcelona has told us, before we can even begin, we must be able to control our lower desire to a certain extent. To that extent, we start now. You can't control desires in a day or two, no, not in one life. You can't get it. So you go directly, slowly, until you become perfect. Thank you. I'll end here for questions. I used to say the Bible has been to Western world by recording it. And each everyone has been given the religion that is best suited to the people. In every religion, there are perfections in them. And there are others who decide not to go by it and then do the wrong thing. Even if you go to the fetish and that, there are certain laws which also guide them, which is good. So every religion that will help you to grow, you can't, like they are giving us the fellowship, do retrospection, do this. How many of us are here to do it properly? It seems some of us, it's very hard for us. So they give you gradually so that it will help you to grow. But if you decide not to follow any religion and go your own way, it's up to you. You are still in the school. If you decide not to go to classes, but you can learn on your own and pass the exam. Fair or wrong, fair it is. I've done it. You can write the exam to pass, learn on your own, you have done it. If you decide to go to classes, it's also good for you. So the religion are just like the classes for us to attend. You can learn, you go and practice it, what they have been taught. You go and practice it. So if you decide I won't go to nature, but I'll be able to write it down. It's up to you. That's what I can say. Okay, his question is, whether in the movement you were interacting with the angels, with the boss, the students, they were guiding this. But that time, they don't have the soul body, so how were you interacting with the angels? And the question is, the answer is, the soul body itself is made of ether. The two higher inside is our in the mind. By the removing our bodies were more etheric. We are more etheric because that the world has gone through process together with our bodies who have gone through transformation. So we were all etheric bodies. So we were able to see the angels who are also in the same body as our senior brothers who are guiding and promoting us, helping us. That is why we need to stay. It is when we started to crystallize, take the Lord into our and we crystallize. That is why our bodies become so dense and difficult that after when we were committing the gratification, our spiritual side we were getting on and we will become more dense that now you don't see anything. You don't have any relationship with them. So now the order is for us to make our bodies more etheric again, for us to go and then bring to contact them. And that is where we can go the children and then contact them and then leave the physical body. I don't know whether to add anything to it. Yeah, you can. You know, in the very opinion, we were not in somebody. There was nothing like somebody. Because nothing has been derived consciously in order to separate the two higher entities from the two lower entities. We haven't been there at all. Eventually, that is what we would have done if the Lucifer spirit had not entered it. So it was a gradual process
become fully conscious and able to build the soul body. But our spiritual centers of perception were alive. Our spiritual centers of perception, they were alive. That's why our consciousness was more in the etheric world compared to the physical world. So we were interacting with the angels, but not with the soul body.
No, that time you were even not in the body. In the movement and for the spirit was not in the body. You were outside. Our spirit and then you see the angels are spirit. That's what was contacting them. It is when we started to come into the body, that is where the physical spirit also came to be tested. Because we were young and then our consciousness, the mind was given to us, and we were young that we trusted them. Like before they were like the angels who are guiding us. So they tell you go, you and this your physical body, come together and give them. Then you follow them. But the enlightenment also become more conscious of the physical world, and if you're able to conquer the physical world, then they are purposes.
I have two questions based on what you have said. What you have said. I actually have two questions already lined up before you even spoke about it. The one is that, are we saying that in a day, about 8 billion human beings that we have in this physical world as of today, in a day we all fall like that? I don't know whether my question is clear. The population of the world now is supposed to be 8 billion. And we say that in one day, all of us work.
So the population is about 8 billion. Is it that all of us are fall in one day, and or when the newspapers say 8 billion and we get educated individuals one by one, and now come that we are all falling at this stage? That is a very interesting question. Now what I can say is that when you talk of Adam, you don't talk of Adam fall, it's not one person, it's a humanity. And we are going through a process. It may be that some have been falling early, but since the process has been laid down, you also come and fall in the same thing. Once maybe you may be ignorant, but I have tasted and I have no one to think. So if I see your body and like I come and attack you, do the same thing with you, and you also get to know it. And you will gradually and then until the whole population becomes